If the sum total of the discussion with your partner when you get home in the evening is, how was your day? What's for dinner? What shall we watch on Showmax? And you wish there was more to your communication, well, then you want to listen up, because we've invited relationship expert Paula Quinsee to come and chat to us about heartful and mindful communication with our partners. Welcome, Paula.
Hi.
You came at the right time. I was actually having a conversation with a friend yesterday, and she said that she feels that because of the way she was brought up, in the environment that she was brought up, her parents didn't know how to communicate very well. They stayed together, but she feels that now she can see, as a result of that, she struggles communicating with her partner. And then that can go on, right? For generations, you can have that type of learnt behavior. What is good quality communication?
So you're right when you're saying that our upbringing influences us, because it absolutely does. That's where the foundation of our emotional intelligence is formed. And then thereafter it's reinforced throughout our lifetime, and it affects our adult relationships. So real communication is where there's a real connection, where the space, the relational space between two people is safe enough that you are not only listening but hearing what the other person is saying from. You can empathize with them. You can even disagree with them, but in a respectful way. And you can also be open and honest as to what you're thinking, feeling, wanting, or needing with that situation or that person.
That's how often people communicate. We're trying to anticipate whether you're going to agree or not agree, like what I'm saying, and then you think, well, maybe I should leave it altogether. There's not a lot of authentic communication that happens. In fact, I heard a doctor say that social media is the junk food of communication. It gives you all the bells and the whistles without the real substance to it. So do you think we're becoming poorer communicators because of the digital era?
I think the way we're communicating is changing because of the digital era. Nowadays, a lot of communication is through devices and applications.
And text messages and
absolutely.
emails.
You know, particularly the younger generation, that's how they communicate these days, through voice notes or Snapchat, that kind of thing. So we've got to learn to communicate differently, but we also have to learn how to have real communication, whether it's through platforms and devices or whether it's face-to-face. We are losing the art of communication. And I think it's sometimes easier to hide behind devices than be honest about what I'm thinking or what I'm really wanting to say to you. I'd rather put a little smiley face, and then I don't have to say or be honest or you know.
So what is the difference between heartful communication and then mindful communication, or are they sort of intertwined?
I think they do go hand in hand. So heartful communication is when you feel the connection, when you are fully present in the conversation, in the moment with that person. You know when someone is not giving you their fully undivided attention.
Although that being said, we speak about body language, right? And I really feel comfortable crossing my arms. And every communication, relationship, seminar or person I've spoken to is like, well, that shows that you don't want to communicate with someone, yet that's not my intention. So is that starting to change? Are we starting to understand that personality is coming to the fore as well?
This is where the mindful comes in. So self-awareness and relational awareness, and body language is part of that. 7% of our communication is verbal. The rest is all non-verbal. So the more you get to know someone and you understand their behavioral traits, you will understand the difference between closed-off communication, or I'm just comfortable, or I'm cold. And you will then understand that person and how they are communicating with you, or not.
In South Africa, though, this melting pot of different cultures, it's difficult to understand some of the cultural nuances. Are there basic tenets to communication that sort of run through those divides?
I think the starting point is humanity. Treat everybody with respect and as a human being, first and foremost, before anything else. The part, particularly in South Africa, because of our cultural dynamics, it would be of benefit and advantage for people to start understanding each other's different cultures and cultural nuances. So taking the time out to get to know people and find out about their worlds and understand each other's different cultures, because what works for my culture and what is okay in my culture might be an insult in your culture. But I wouldn't know that if I didn't ask you or was curious to learn more and know more about it.
Especially since we're seeing more blended families, interracial relationships as well. How do you help couples sort of navigate that space as well?
And it would be starting with what are the things that we as a couple find important for us as a unit, as the couple, in terms of our values and our traditions and the culture that we want to maintain from a blended perspective. And then how do we teach that to our children and our families? And how do we respect our families when it comes to the important things, the important celebrations, the ceremonies, the beliefs, the traditions, and how do we uphold those because it's out of respect and honor to each other, but at the same time, how do we build our own traditions and our own cultures as a blended family?
Do you think this is a conversation you need to sort of dedicate time for and say, you know, in order to improve communication in our family or in our relationship, let's have a day off, go to the spa and discuss our value system? Or
Absolutely.
Is that something that someone should, instead of a by-the-by, in-passing type of conversation, right?
Absolutely. Whether you're a blended family or not every couple needs to sit down before they go to those serious levels of the relationship. You know, we're moving in together, or we're getting engaged, then we're getting married, then we're starting a family. You need to have those conversations to first of all see that you're on the same page. So values, what values do we have? What values do we want to instill? What are our relationship values? What are our relationship boundaries and our non-negotiables? Because that sets the boundaries. And if you don't keep your relationship safe, no one else is going to keep it safe. And we attach different meanings to different words. So for example, cheating. In my world, cheating could be as simple as you're texting someone behind my back and I don't know about it. You're cheating. In someone else's world, it could be, well, you've actually done the deed with someone. That's cheating. So you need to understand where you stand with each other, and you won't know that if you don't have those discussions.
It's kind of like creating your own dictionary, right?
Correct.
When we come back, we continue our chat with Paula, and we'll also find out what you can do to get the communication started and going on an improved level in your relationship. Stay with us. Welcome back to Real Health. If you've just tuned in, I'm joined by relationship expert Paula Quinsee, and we're talking about how to improve the communication in your relationship, and whatever that relationship is, you know, between partners, between parents and children, between employees and employers as well. What are some of the elements in communication that are just no-nos, and it's definitely going to lead to a breakdown in communication?
I think without realizing it, what we do is, because we look at the world through our own perspective, we try and get people to see things from our perspective. Whereas the art of communication is, how do I step into the other person's world and see things from their perspective? How do I get a deeper understanding about why they're saying that, why are they thinking that, why are they behaving or reacting like that? So it's like looking at that glass that's half full, half empty. We're both looking at the same thing.
It's perspective.
It's perspective. And how do we, so it's not about who's right and who's wrong, but naturally I think we try and prove, or try and say, you're right, I'm wrong, that kind of thing, instead of, we've got a glass, it's got water in it, it's got air in it. What do we do with this, and how can we benefit from it?
And how do you see it? Do you think we don't ask enough questions?
We don't. I think we become reactive, and our emotions come into play, and it's very difficult for someone, or it's not easy for someone to take the emotion out of a situation and try and see the perspective and then handle it in a mature way. So it's okay to disagree, but disagree in a respectful and mature way.
So avoid shouting, avoid using words that would hurt the other person. What about leaving the room or staying in the room? That's one thing that comes up quite a bit.
So the key things, no blaming, no shaming, no criticizing, no fault finding, no belittling. Those are just red flags when it comes to arguments and disagreements. So the key foundation for good communication: trust, honesty, respect equals communication. If I can trust myself to do the right thing, if I can trust the space to be open and honest, if I can trust my partner, then communication can begin. And this is in personal or professional relationships. If I can be honest with you, then there's an expectation that you're going to be honest with me. And
how do you avoid falling into a tit-for-tat scenario where it sort of degrades into something else?
When the emotion starts coming into play and you can see that the conversation is spiraling downwards, that's where you can put a pause on the conversation. Say, look, I can see that we're getting heated about this and that we're kind of heading down that path of no return. Let's put a pause on it. Let's go and reflect. Let's think about it. Let's come back and put solutions on the table.
What about where you have traditional roles of, perhaps, in a heterosexual relationship, what a man should do and what a woman should do? And if the woman says, let's put a pause on that, may make the man feel like, but I'm the leader in the relationship, or I'm the man of this household. How do you handle those? It's almost a maturity thing as well. Those type of nuances in communication.
Definitely is an emotional maturity, and this is where emotional intelligence plays a key role. So self-development, self-growth, develop your own emotional awareness and intelligence, and it will then portray outwards as to how you deal with people and situations. When it comes to managing conflict and conversations, it's about as long as you do it respectfully. And you do it in a mature way. Now, when it comes to the relational space, it's about how do we co-create this space, because we are equally accountable and responsible for keeping our relationship space safe and clean in terms of negative stuff. And how do we both co-communicate with each other? How do we really be present in the moment, and how do we really listen and really hear what the other person is saying? And so in the world of imago relationship therapy, when it comes to conflict management styles, there's two styles that we refer to. One is what we call a minimizer, and the other is a maximizer. A minimizer is like a tortoise. When they're feeling threatened, they will shut down, withdraw into their shell.
Which frustrates the maximizer.
Exactly, right? To protect themselves and keep themselves safe on an emotional level. Whereas the maximizer is the opposite. They're like a lion. When a lion is feeling threatened, it'll come out and attack to kill the enemy to protect themselves and keep themselves safe.
Why is it that a minimizer often attracts a maximizer, right? That's often the case.
Yes, a cliche, opposites attract. Majority of the time it does happen, and it comes from childhood. Because when we are growing up, we take on both the positive and the negative traits of our primary caregivers. And we call it childhood wounding. Every one of us gets wounded in childhood because our parents, bless them, as much as they try, they're not perfect and they cannot meet our every need. So we start adapting our behavior from a young age already to cope with either what we're not getting or what we are getting too much of. And that becomes our behavioral patterns and traits. And it plays out in our adult relationships, particularly when it comes to conflict management styles. So minimizer and maximizer have been wounded at the same stage in childhood. And when we meet someone, if we look at the relationship cycle, the honeymoon romantic phase, when we first meet that person, we are consciously and subconsciously only identifying with the positive traits. Which is why we're in love. And there's research that shows that when we are in love, it's almost the same as a high as an addict.
I can believe that.
And until reality and life shows up on our doorstep, and that generally takes anything between 3 months and 24 months for the romantic phase to move into the next phase, which is the power struggle phase. And this is where the dance happens with the minimizer, maximizer. And you know, I'll say something, you'll react, then we react to reactions, which is the smoke screen for what's really going on underneath. And our emotional needs are not being met in some way, form, or shape. And those are the emotional triggers that causes the conflict in the relationship.
So how does a minimizer, or how does a maximizer coax that minimizer out of their shell, get them to communicate and talk more? Because often you have the one that does talk a lot in the relationship, and you have one that says, you know, it's fine. I don't need to use my 50,000 words a day or whatever it is. And then, you know, vice versa. How does the minimizer get the maximizer to just calm down?
First of all, being aware of what your triggers are and when you are being triggered. Because we generally have 2 to 3 signals from a body perspective, a physiological perspective, as when we're being triggered. For example, a knot in your stomach, or you could feel, you know, that tightness in your chest, or tense, and, you know, or you become snappy. So identifying your own triggers and know that you're being triggered, and then understand why or what's happening that you're being triggered. This is where emotional maturity comes into play. A maximizer needs to learn to tone their energy down. So in other words, the shouting, the loud voice, the screaming, the tone it down,
whatever,
co-create the safe space. The minimizer has to learn to be brave and peek out of their shell and come into the middle so that both of you can meet each other halfway and co-create a safe space to communicate. And communicating the frustrations in a mature way. So for example, when you moved that glass over there, what really upset me is that there was a stain left on the table and you didn't get up and clean the stain. And really what I would have liked next time is if you could just clean the stain or use a coaster. Because what that does is it triggers me, and then I get upset, and then that's how the fight started.
So tone is also important, just keeping it in a tone
absolutely
that is sort of, you both understand that there's no desire to create any form of conflict. I don't know if we're going to have enough time to go into love languages, so we might have to bring you back there. But is that something that you see is critical to good communication, understanding what people want and how they communicate their love languages?
Absolutely. We love in different ways, and generally we speak our own love language.
Yes.
So I will speak my love language,
and you've got
to
learn what the other person's love language is.
And you've got to learn to speak each other's love languages,
because often it feels like we're speaking different languages generally. Sometimes it's like I'm speaking Greek, you're speaking Chinese. How am I not understanding what you're saying?
And that's where, if you ask deeper questions, for a magic sentence that you can ask, tell me more.
Okay.
There's always more.
Yeah.
So about that glass, tell me more about that. Why does that frustrate you so much? And the tell me more invites you to go deeper and deeper as to what is the real frustration.
Okay. What about sort of clarifying that you understand what that person said? So by what you've said, I hear that da-da-da-da-da. Is that good, or does it irritate people?
we call it mirroring.
Okay.
Some people see it as paraphrasing, and it can be frustrating because we don't naturally talk like that.
Yeah.
But what it does give you is it gives you the ability to learn very good listening skills, because in order to mirror or paraphrase back, you have to really listen and really hear what the other person is saying. And when you're really listening and being fully present, it makes the space safe enough for communication to happen.